Good morning. My name is Lindsay Blake, and I'm here with my group member, Amber. We are going to be presenting today on transitioning to a residential group home. Jump right in with the summary of literature. So Amber and I did a number of bunch of research, both on the Mohawk Library website for available online articles and books, as well as on Google, just for some basic websites and stuff. So there's an awful lot of books and website blogs and whatnot available, mostly written for parents and families and caregivers of autistic individuals that provide guidance and recommendations on preparing for adulthood. I will say personally, in my research, I didn't find an awful lot of direct group home transition criteria or material, but what we were able to find and what we'll focus on today I think meets the goal of talking about information about helping an autistic individual move into independent living, and in this case, in a group home setting. I was able to narrow search down to scholarly articles specifically around video-based instruction or video modeling as a great support and resource for people with autism. We're going to jump right in to look at two of the most liked examples that we found. So the first is this book called Launching Your Autistic Youth to Successful Adulthood. This is available and can be viewed fully online through the Mohawk Library. The book is written by Dr. Katharina Manassis. She's a child psychiatrist based at the University of Toronto. In her professional life, she works with families with individuals that have autism, and she herself has raised an autistic son. So what I really liked about this book is it's less of an instruction manual with sort of step-by-step instructions or checklists. It's written more as a conversation style. So she uses a bunch of real life case studies from her professional and personal life to look at challenges that autistic people are facing in their transition out of childhood services and supports into adulthood. So talks about not only setting your child up to live independently as one option, but it also provides a lot of information about families who are going to have their child stay with them for the foreseeable future. Talks about change differences of opinion between autistic individuals and their families and caregivers. So overall, it was a really interesting book to read. One of the main points that stuck out to me was talking about autistic people needing a really structured social life as a huge quality of life requirement going into adulthood. So that could be regularly scheduled time with friends, involvement in the community, volunteering, participation in day programs offered through some community organizations. And in our case, having an autistic individual living in a group home surrounded by peers and with staff assisting with life skills was a really great opportunity to provide that social life, structured social life for the person with ASD. And this also ensures that having this structured social time means that they can retain all of the social skills that they've been mastering throughout their childhood and adolescence. So if anyone wants to look up this book, it is available at the library. The reference is down below. You can easily just search the title and pull up the book through the library. Moving on to the scholarly article. So this was a review of a number of studies. This was written by Dr. Christine, I'm not even going to attempt her last name because I will mispronounce it, and Kyriaki from the University of Macedonia in Greece. So they reviewed 19 scholarly studies that were investigating various types of video-based instruction to explore the utilization and efficacy of the video-based instruction in enhancing functional living capabilities of adolescents and young adults. So basically, they looked at all the literature and all the data that was done about how effective video-based instruction was, how how useful participants found it, and how kind of happy they were with using it. Were they comfortable using the technology? Blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, the findings of this review demonstrated that video modeling alone or in conjunction with other methods or strategies is most often used to enhance functional living skills in adolescents and young adults. So that includes social skills, vocational skills, life skills, etc. One of the nice things that the review pointed out, and that makes really good sense, is that video-based instruction is a really great tool for people with autism because it's technology based. And a lot of autistic people tend to gravitate towards technology. They feel comfortable using it. It's also nice because it takes away the anxiety around having to interact with a strange person. So there's not a real live person on the other end of these video models. It is a computer. So they don't have to worry about messing up in their conversation or staying too close to someone or all the things that can trip people with autism up in day-to-day social interaction. This is a really great tool for them to work on those skills in a non-threatening way. Okay, I'm going to move on to our hypothetical transition team. So we built a pretend family client as the primary team members of our transition team. So first off, we have our client, Joshua, and his family. So Joshua is 20 years old, diagnosed with level 2 autism, and has recently graduated high school. He's moving into a group home as a first step to living independently from his family. And his family consists of his mom and dad and his sister. They recently immigrated to Canada, and their first language is Hindi. The other important people in our transition team are Joshua's behavior therapist. So the therapist will create a plan. Plan for Joshua to help him cope with the upcoming changes of the transition. They will also produce transition support such as visual aids and social stories. And our interpretation was that the behavior therapist likely has already been working with Joshua for at least a year or two and knows him well, knows his strength, knows his needs, and will follow him along into this transition to his new living space. Another important person in our transition team is the director of the group home. So they'll get to know Joshua and his family really well. They'll work to accommodate and facilitate a successful move into the home and make sure that Joshua settles in okay, and that if additional supports are needed, they'll work to facilitate that within the home. Another important member of the team is a social worker. So they'll monitor the transition, make efforts to protect Joshua and his rights as a client in the home. They may also be well-versed on immigration, recent immigrants, and resources available outside of autism-specific resources, but also for new families to Canada. And this might be a really great resource for the family dealing with any of those concerns as well. And lastly would be a psychiatrist. So they may be the psychiatrist associated with the group home, maybe a private psychiatrist Joshua's already been working with. And their role is to monitor Joshua closely throughout the transition, recommend any required changes to medications, as well as if there's additional support that the psychiatrist feels Joshua may benefit from, such as group therapy or talk therapy sessions. Important point for our transition team is to focus on collaboration and communication. Effective collaboration and open communication will be key factors in the success of the team. They'll have regular meetings, share decision-making responsibilities, and be transparent with their sharing of information to ensure the team's aligned and that progress is made toward the common goal of assisting Joshua through this major life transition. I'm going to pass it over to Amber to go through our transition timeline.
Thanks, Lindsay. When you think about collaboration and communication, if you're a professional in the field, you know that that piece is so important when it comes to creating the timeline because everyone on that team that Lindsay just mentioned brings their own unique perspective. So the parents will always kind of see Joshua as their child, it's natural. And the behavioral therapist will see everything from a behavioral lens. The psychiatrist is in charge of meds, social worker is in charge of his rights and autonomy. So when everyone's working together, it does create a really beautiful through line to a smooth transition. And when it comes to creating the timeline, you need to all be working together. And in theory, everyone's busy, but in theory, something goes on the calendar for every professional to assist in the transition. So on the next slide, we'll show you what we've created for Joshua. It may feel early for some, but at least a month before, a behavioral therapist would create what's called a social story for Joshua's families to look over and then eventually to implement with Joshua. Depending on his level of cognitive function, his awareness, and kind of developmentally where he's at, would depend on what this social story looks like. So, whatever he can understand as this is your routine at home, and this will be what your routine looks like in the group home, would be created. Preferably, like Lindsay said, it could be something that's a video, it could be pictures if he works with pictures. Sometimes just symbols work. But the behavioral therapist would know Joshua well enough to know what he'd respond to. Then 3 weeks before, Joshua and his parents will go to the facility and they'll do a tour. This preferably would be on a day that Joshua could meet the staff that will be working with him and whoever is going to be in the home in 3 weeks, who will be kind of his roommates. In a well-functioning group home, they all become like a second family. So establishing positive associations is really crucial. And helping Joshua kind of get over the hump of the new and the change is tough. So the more familiar he is with the space, the more his anxiety will decrease. And this can sometimes be a long shot because social workers are notoriously way overworked. But if they had time, it would be great if they could come and be kind of that liaison and go between the parents and the group home facilitator who they may have different agendas, and she can be an excellent bridge between what the family feels Joshua needs, what Joshua says he needs, and overcome any language barriers since they are new Canadians. Then 2 weeks before, Joshua will participate in a group music class. Our group home has a music therapist, and we chose that because every group home I've worked in has either had a music therapist or I've advocated for one because music can be a common language, even if some people aren't verbal. Music is a great way to reach almost everybody. So the music therapist will be briefed on Joshua's needs and challenges, what his ability is, what his anxiety level is that day, and work hard to include him in a way that doesn't feel too invasive and helps him feel safe. And again, that's another opportunity for a week later, Joshua to come to the group home, look around, remember, right, this is what this looks like, and slowly become familiar. And best case scenario, the current residents will be told that Joshua's coming. However, that phrasing works for them. It might be our new friend is coming or your new roommate is coming, and they'll be encouraged to be inclusive. And in our family, Joshua does love music. So it's again one more positive association. And on the next slide, we're going to go to 12 days before because a full week might be a little much. So 12 days before, Joshua will be given a very specific goal. So we chose a number of boxes, the size of the boxes, all the materials, and Joshua's parents will be instructed to be as hands-off as possible. I know as a mom of an autistic boy, it's very hard, but to step back and encourage him with verbal prompts to pack his things in the boxes, shown how to pack them safely, and then to tape and label it to the best of his ability. And then during this process, this would be a great opportunity to do it during a quiet moment at home maybe if his worker is available or his therapist is available, to do things in tandem, not take it over, but maybe work parallel to Joshua so they can talk through any concerns that have come up. And this would be done in maybe the middle of the day when his medications are in him, but before the evening anxiety sets in. And it will be very real when Joshua starts seeing his stuff put in boxes. So this would be a good opportunity for him to sit in those uncomfortable feelings, to express them, and this will build his own resilience. That is a big obstacle with a lot of autistic people, is that because they feel things so intensely, almost need to be taught that they can handle it on a different level than a neurotypical person. So this is a great opportunity for that as well. And as he grows more confident in himself, that will make his independent living more successful. So then a week before, Joshua's parents will use a checklist provided by the group home. There's always a packing list. They'll review it with Joshua, they'll check the boxes, and they'll talk about, again, the upcoming changes. Okay, one more week, 7 sleeps next Monday, however that looks. And then Joshua will take some of the boxes that have non essential items, so things he won't need in the next 7 days, to his new home. He'll say hi to his new roommates again. He'll join them for a meal because food can be a very big trigger for a lot of autistic kids. He can smell the food, see how everyone's sitting, discuss any challenges. Maybe the food's touching and he doesn't like that, any sensory issues. And then Joshua's parents can stay, help make small talk, be kind of that social lubricant with the workers, and again, make Joshua a familiar face and their face is familiar to Joshua. So 2 to 5 days before the move, Joshua will bring more and more items from his old room to his new room. Again, timed around a meal or a group activity like music or art class that he'll be encouraged to join in. And it'll be like a slow fade into what their routine is at that house. And any enthusiasm that Joshua expresses, anything that he seems to enjoy more than others, that will be emphasized and focused on. And then on the next slide, be one day before, which is often a tough day for clients and for our kids. He will be verbally prompted to use his social storyboard, not to be told the story anymore, but he's not going to tell his parents. So his therapist or his worker will sit with him and say, okay, let's tell your parents what's going to happen tomorrow. You can make it funny, keep it light, maybe do it around snack time. And he'll be encouraged to focus on the positive, which the neurodivergent brain struggles with. So this may take a bit of coaching, but encouraged to focus on, did you enjoy music class? Or was the dessert really good? Or you seem to connect with that friend that you talked to at lunch. Anything positive. And then on the move-in day, he will start his morning routine as usual at home. And that will help keep Joshua calm and more regulated, especially with food or medication. And then he will bring his remaining belongings, which hopefully is minimal, on his ride to the new group home. And then his parents won't stay any longer than is strictly necessary, because this is a moment where Joshua will need to focus on transition, and the longer parents stay can sometimes make the transition harder. They'll leave him with a worker who is extra friendly and is connected with Joshua, and preferably during a fun activity, like a good snack or a music class or something like that. And of course, transitions don't just magically end when the event has happened. A lot of transitioning happens afterwards because it can be a really tough experience when change is your nemesis. So a week after, Joshua's social worker will schedule a visitation with the house supervisor and Joshua no later than 1 week. Fortunately, this is also the law. So the worker will have to do that, but we include it because, things fall through the cracks. So the parents are going to follow up and make sure that that rule is being followed. And the social worker will review how he's coping with the changes. So if Joshua can't express that, they'll look at, is he sleeping through the night? Is he eating most of the meals? How does he seem? Does he seem happy? Does he seem down? And then it's important to help Joshua continue to move forward and not just stay stuck in this is the last change. So, what are his next goals? Because a lot can be accomplished once you're living independently and you realize you're capable. Maybe Joshua has some exciting goals for the future. Maybe he wants to get a job. Maybe he wants to do some classes. Maybe he just has some social goals. Like Lindsay said earlier, it's really important to have some structured social engagement, which for Joshua, there is some at a group home, but it is also very easy for clients to just live parallel to each other. It's not really meeting a social need necessarily. So, what are Josh's social goals moving forward? And then, of course, the staff there will have seen some transitional challenges and they may want to talk about how to address them. Joshua becomes angry or aggressive if they're worried about him not getting up in time for meds, they're worried about him not eating enough. This is the moment to have a discussion about it. Moving on to the next slide. With all of those challenges, supports and resources will be really important. And determining the appropriate supports and resources can be a little difficult. Like Lindsay said earlier, we were really surprised about how many are for children or youth, especially since the majority of our lives, autistic people included, is as an adult. So I have noticed at work that sometimes it is kind of left to maybe the music therapist, the art therapist, maybe just the entry level workers to take something that was meant for children and adapt it to an adult, which is unfortunate because we all have varying levels of skill in that area. And if you add in something like English being a second language, that can be really challenging. And it's really important not to infantilize someone because of their disability. So while I've seen that at work and I have felt that as a parent, it was interesting to see just how few resources are for adults. And I do believe, and I'm sure Lindsay agrees, that it points towards the stigma and systemic issues that disabled people face. So on the next slide, a big area we saw that was in social stories. Fortunately, a social story can be easily created by anybody in the person's life. And if Josh was anything like my clients or my kids, a picture of a mom who doesn't look like my mom isn't going to work. So, creating something that is tailored to your client is key. On the next slide, we will show you another option. And the tour of the facility is something I mentioned in my transition timeline. Pictures of that particular facility can be included in the social story, and video stories, as Lindsay mentioned earlier, are fantastic. So you could do a video walking through the group home. In a perfect world, the group home would have something available online, walking it through for their clients. But it's easy enough to do with everyone having a smartphone these days to create their own. Joshua's family will be a big part of that tour success. So if they are positive and they have already communicated ahead of time, which is essential in my opinion, then Joshua will feel the parents' mood walking through it. He'll pick up on their anxiety. So that communication and collaboration piece is really important. In the next slide, we get down to what we've been talking about quite a bit, which is video-based instructions or video modeling. There are more available, as we said before, for children than adults, but some are transferable either way. Joshua will be participating in a video-based instruction 4 days a week for at least 1 to 2 hours at a time. And those skills will be based around what he'll need to be independent in a group home. Life skills can be a big problem for going from home life with your mom and your dad and your siblings and everyone who is used to adapting around Joshua normally. He's now moving to a space where there are many Joshuas and he will have to do some things for himself. And ultimately, it will be a really positive experience for Joshua to know he can do it himself. And that said, there's some resistance. Joshua may feel rejected. He may feel abandoned. He may feel incapable. So, to come from a strength based perspective and for the staff to be aware of what videos he's been watching so they can use the same language will go a long way.
I'm just going to jump in here, Amber. So I did embed this video. I think in the essence of time, we're not going to have time to watch that, but I will. It is linked in the reference page, and I do encourage anyone who's watching our presentation today, if they're interested in seeing what a good example of video modeling, is go back and watch this YouTube video that I have in the presentation here.
Absolutely. It's a really fantastic video. And I will pass the next slide on to Lindsay.
Thank you. So the next thing is resources for newcomer family. Because our hypothetical family is new to Canada, we wanted to include some potential resources that they may use in a transition. So firstly would be a translator. We did mention that our family's first language is not English. So there may be in some parts of the transition process that they want to involve a translator. This may be a volunteer from their community, potentially someone they hire to attend transition meetings or review documents to make sure that they are understanding everything that's been spoken and written down. Social worker, this may be a different social worker to the one that's working with Joshua on his transition to a group home. This may be a specific immigration worker. Oops, sorry. A specific immigration worker that will work with the family to make sure that they are aware of all of the resources available to them. There's also organizations such as the South Asian Autism Awareness Center. This was a group founded in Toronto in 2008 to spread awareness and support for South Asian families specifically affected by ASD. Now, given that it's 2024, they have diversified their model. They now support any families affected with autism, but they do have a really strong base for the South Asian community and culture. Additionally, there are websites available for such as Kids New to Canada. There's a great link here, and the page lists a ton of community resources that serve immigrant and refugee families. The list is organized by province, and it also includes national services as well. So that's a wonderful way for them to self-advocate by looking at those resources available and choosing what might work best for them. Moving on to potential barriers we identified as part of this transition process. So number one, English being a second language, there can be a lot lost in translation. Their citizenship or permanent resident status and access to resources. Limited understanding of the Canadian social support system. So I don't know what the support system for autistic and disabled individuals is like in India, where they're from, but certainly it will be an adjustment coming to a completely different country with a completely different system. Additionally, they may have limited financial resources given that they're new to Canada, and we don't know what the working situation of the family is. Whether they were able to retain the same credentials they held in their home country to here, etc. So as for some options to overcome these barriers, we already mentioned, have a translator, whether that's a hired person, a volunteer, whatnot, that will help alleviate the second language issue. Work with immigration to ensure the permanent residence and citizenship is secure. And that they get access to all of the resources that they will need. Work with a social worker to help navigate the immigration system and access supports, and then apply for all grants, tax credits, disability services, etc., to help alleviate some of the financial burdens. I'm going to pass it back over for the transition success criteria. I think you're on mute, Amber.
Thanks, Lindsay. Knowing what you're measuring and how you can tell if something has been a success, it's really important to set ahead of time because that could look different for everyone. So we've set up a SMART goal on the next slide to outline what that would look like. So of course, a SMART goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So specifically, we've said that Joshua will actively engage in the pre-move preparations, including packing his belongings, attending orientation sessions, discussing concerns. We gave it 4 weeks to make it measurable. That after the move, Joshua will express some level of verbal confidence in the transition. And of course, all the necessary paperwork will be filled out. So that doesn't place all of this goal on Joshua. The paperwork is crucial, legally crucial for Joshua to move forward. And it does involve the team that we just mentioned earlier. And of course, we want our goal to be achievable. So the team will provide Joshua with a checklist. As we've said, that he's supported during orientation and will continue to address questions or anxieties. So he knows he's not alone. We feel this is a very relevant goal. His readiness is crucial for a smooth transition. And of course, the long-term goal is overall well-being. And it's time-bound. A 4-week period feels both achievable and realistic. Give it a full month for Joshua to feel confident and a full month for all the professionals to sign off. On our next slide, we've listed a lot of useful websites. Not as many as we would have liked for both new Canadians and adults with disabilities, but we still found quite a few. Lindsay, was there any that you wanted to highlight?
The major ones was Disability Services Ontario has a great transition planning document. So that's the second one listed on this slide. And then the autism community training I found really good. Just in general, learning more about autism. There's a ton of videos on there with all kinds of topics. They did have a few about adulthood transitions. And they weren't specific again to a group home. But it was useful still to see how much is out there. Because as Amber mentioned, in our initial searches, it's like, whoa, it's just like people stop existing as autistic once they hit adulthood, and it's quite sad. So there is some out there. I'm sure there's more if we had had time to dig deeper. But this was sort of the real strengths, the real strong options that we found in our research. And then finally, as for community organizations, we did keep it to the Hamilton area for these, but these are for really strong autism specific support groups. There are more, but these were really helpful ones that stood out in the research. So Woodview offers a bunch of skill building programs, day programs, social clubs, etc., that Joshua could engage in. You know, they could pick him up, have him go to meet with a new group. This could be the structured social outings that he may need apart from what the group home is able to offer. Cornerstone Special Needs Services also offers a bunch of day programs, a lot of recreation activities, and life skill building. They also will work with families on financial services, so making sure their financial health is in order. Adults in Motion also offers day programs, virtual programs, workshops, and clubs. And then Momentum Autism Services has behavior therapists on staff to assist anyone with autism, no matter their age. So that wraps up our presentation. Here's our list of references. And hopefully everyone found that informative and useful.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone so much for listening.
Thank you so much. We hope that it was helpful.
All right.